The Prodigal Master. I remember the cold rain hitting my face the night my life ended. Before we continues, please subscribe and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support helps this powerful, life-changing story reach the world. I was only 4 years old, standing in front of the Empire Casino. My father, Arthur, looked down at me with eyes colder than the storm. He didn't see a son, he saw a failure. "You don't have the killer instinct," he snapped. He wanted a prodigy to take over the casino business, someone who could calculate odds before they could walk. I was just a boy who liked to draw. He grabbed my small hand and led me to the edge of the property. He gave me a single plastic poker chip and told me to never come back. He said I wasn't worthy of the family name. I watched his black car drive away, leaving me shivering under the bright neon lights of the Empire. I was alone in a world of adult greed. The cold soaked through my thin jacket, and I cried until my lungs hurt. I didn't understand why a father would hate his own child for not being a businessman. That night, I learned that love in my family was something you had to earn with profits. I clutched that cheap plastic chip in my small fist, a useless token of a life I no longer owned. I sat on the steps of the local orphanage for hours. The lady who found me was kind, but she couldn't fix the hole in my heart. I didn't talk for months. I just stared at the neon glow of the city in the distance. Every time I saw a flash of light, I thought of the casino. The other kids tried to play with me, but I felt older than them. I felt like a soldier returning from a war I had already lost. I kept the poker chip hidden under my pillow. It was a reminder of the man who rejected me. I promised myself I would grow up to be someone he could never ignore. But as a small boy in a crowded room of forgotten children, that promise felt impossible. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into years. I learned to hide my emotions behind a mask of calm. I watched the adults who came to visit, learning to read their faces. I could tell who was lying and who was truly kind. Without knowing it, I was developing the very skills my father thought I lacked. I was becoming a master of observation. I just needed a teacher to show me how to use it. When I was 10, a man named Victor Vane visited the orphanage. He wasn't like the other potential parents. He didn't look for a cute child to hug. He looked for intelligence. He found me sitting alone in the corner, watching a card game between the older boys. He asked me who was going to win. Without blinking, I pointed to the smallest boy. "He's bluffing," I said quietly. But the other one is too scared to call him out. Victor raised an eyebrow. He told the headmistress he wanted to adopt me. Victor was the #1 man in the casino world, a legend who controlled empires across the globe. He was my father's biggest rival. When he took me home to his mansion, he didn't give me toys. He gave me books on probability, psychology, and strategy. He told me that the casino business wasn't about luck. It was about understanding human fear. "Your father was wrong about you, Elias," Victor told me one night. "He wanted a shark, but I am going to make you the ocean." Under Victor's wing, my new life began. I was no longer the abandoned child. I was the apprentice to a master. Victor was tough but fair. He treated me like a project that needed constant refining. Every morning, we spent hours studying the math behind every game. I learned how to calculate house edges and how to spot a cheat from a mile away. But the most important lessons were about the mind. Victor took me to high-stakes games and made me sit silently in the corner. I had to take notes on every player's tell. I learned that a twitch of the eye or a sudden change in breathing meant more than the cards in their hand. I became an expert at staying completely still. No one could read me. I was a blank slate, a ghost in the room. Victor called me his secret weapon. By the time I was 15, I could outthink grown men with decades of experience. I never forgot Arthur, though. Sometimes I would search for news about the Empire Casino. I saw pictures of my father looking older and tired. He had taken on new partners who looked dangerous. I knew he was struggling, and a dark part of me felt glad. I was building my power while his was slowly fading away. I was waiting for the right time to return. As I turned 18, Victor gave me my first real test. He handed me a small stake and told me to go to a competitor's casino and double it in one night without using any cheating devices. I walked into the room with total confidence. I didn't go to the loud tables. I sought out the quiet ones where the professional gamblers sat. I watched them for an hour before I placed a single bet. I felt the rush of the game, but I didn't let it cloud my judgment. I remembered everything Victor taught me. By midnight, I had tripled the money. By 3 in the morning, I had cleared the table. The manager came over to watch me, suspicious of my success. I simply smiled and tipped the dealer. I wasn't there for the money, I was there to prove a point to myself. I was no longer the weak child my father discarded. I was Elias, the prodigy of Victor Vane. When I returned to the mansion, Victor just nodded. "You are ready to lead," he said. He began giving me control over the logistics of his global operations. I was learning the business from the inside out, managing thousands of employees and millions in revenue. The years passed quickly as I became Victor's right hand. I traveled to Macau, Las Vegas, and Monaco. Everywhere I went, people spoke my name in whispers. They called me the Master because I never lost a deal and never broke a promise. I built a reputation for being completely unbiased and incredibly sharp. While I was rising to the top, Arthur's business was falling apart. He had tried to expand too fast and had borrowed money from the wrong people. The Empire Casino, once the crown jewel of the city, was now falling into disrepair. I heard rumors that Arthur was desperate, searching for anyone to save him from bankruptcy. He had no idea that the son he had abandoned was now the most powerful man in the industry. Victor saw my interest in the empire's collapse. "Are you going to destroy him?" Victor asked me one evening over coffee. I looked at the old poker chip I still carried in my pocket. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm going to save the business. But first, I have to let him lose everything else. He needs to know what it feels like to have nothing before he can appreciate the value of a son." The day finally came when Victor retired and handed the entire business to me. I was officially the #1 man in the casino world. My first order of business was to start a shadow company called Prodigal Holdings. I used this company to secretly buy up the debts of the Empire Casino. Arthur was so desperate for cash that he didn't even check who was buying his bonds. He just took the money, thinking he had bought himself more time. In reality, I was slowly tying a noose around his business. I bought the land the casino stood on. I bought the vendors who supplied the food and drink. By the end of the month, I owned every debt Arthur had ever signed. I was the ghost owner of his entire life. I sat in my high-rise office, looking at the map of the city. The Empire Casino was just a small dot now. It was time for the master to go home. I felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. I wondered if he would even recognize me. I had grown taller, my voice was deeper, and the scared little boy was buried under layers of iron-willed determination. I was ready. I arrived in my home city on a Tuesday. I didn't go to the casino right away. Instead, I visited the old orphanage. It was still there, but it looked smaller than I remembered. I met with the headmistress and donated a large sum of money to ensure no child would ever feel trapped there again. Then, I drove to the Empire Casino. The neon lights were flickering, and the paint was peeling. It broke my heart to see what my father had done to his legacy. He had grown greedy and careless. I walked through the front doors, and no one stopped me. The security guards were busy arguing with each other. The floors were unclean, and the smell of desperation hung heavily in the air. I walked to the high-limit room. There sits Arthur, surrounded by loan sharks who were demanding their money. He looked broken. His hands trembled as he tried to light a cigar. He looked like a man who had lost his soul. I stood in the shadows and watched him for a long time. I remembered the night he left me, and for a moment, I felt the old sting of rejection. But then I remembered who I was now. One of the loan sharks shouted at Arthur, threatening to take the casino doors off the hinges. Arthur tried to act tough, but his voice cracked. "I just need one more week," he pleaded. I decided it was time to intervene. I stepped into the light. "He doesn't have a week," I said firmly. Everyone turned to look at me. I was wearing a suit that cost more than Arthur's entire table stake. My presence commanded the room instantly. The loan sharks squared up to me, but my security team moved in behind me. They were professionals, and the sharks knew it. "Who are you?" one of them asked, backing away. "I am the man who owns the debt you are trying to collect," I replied. I handed over the legal documents that proved Prodigal Holdings had bought every cent of Arthur's liability. The sharks looked at the papers and realized they were outgunned. They grumbled and left the room without another word. Arthur stared at me, blinking in confusion. He saw a successful businessman, but he didn't see his son. "Thank you," he whispered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But why did you do that? What do you want with my casino?" I looked at Arthur's tired face and felt a strange sense of pity. "I'm not here to take it from you, Arthur," I said quietly. "I'm here to rebuild it." Arthur scrounged for his dignity. "Vane sent you, didn't he? He finally won." I smiled thinly. "Victor Vane is retired. I run the show now." Arthur shook his head. "I don't understand. Why would the most powerful man in the business care about this dying place?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old plastic poker chip. I placed it on the table in front of him. Arthur's eyes widened. He picked up the chip, turning it over in his shaky fingers. He remembered the night at the edge of the property. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. His lips trembled as the realization hit him. "Elias," he whispered. His voice was full of shock and disbelief. "You were just a child. I thought you were gone." I stood tall, looking him in the eye. "I was gone because you sent me away. But the world has a way of bringing things back to where they belong. I am the master now, and I'm here to save what you almost destroyed." Arthur fell into his chair, the weight of his mistakes finally crushing him. He started to cry, not out of sadness for the business, but out of shame. "I was wrong," he sobbed. "I thought strength was about being cold. I thought you were weak because you were kind." I sat down across from him, feeling the strangest sense of peace. The anger that had driven me for years slowly dissipated. "Kindness isn't weakness, Father," I said, using the word for the first time in 2 decades. "Kindness is knowing you have the power to hurt someone but choosing not to. You wanted a shark, but you ended up with a leader." Over the next few days, I took control of the casino. I brought in my own team to clean the floors, repair the machines, and retrain the staff. I fired the corrupt managers who had been stealing from Arthur. I sat down with the family members who had remained, my stepbrothers who had treated me like an outcast. They were terrified of me. They thought I was there for revenge. But I showed them the same mercy Victor had shown me. I gave them jobs, but only if they were willing to work from the bottom up. The news of my return spread through the city like wildfire. The Prodigal Master had returned to save the empire. The casino was transformed within weeks. We rebranded it, combining the traditional elegance Arthur had started with the modern strategy one had learned from Victor. People started coming back. The tables were full again, but this time, the games were fair and the atmosphere was positive. Arthur watched from the sidelines, acting as a consultant. He had lost his leadership role, but he had regained a son. We spent long evenings talking about the past. He told me about the pressure he felt to succeed and how he had let his ego blind him. I told him about the hard years at the orphanage and the long nights of studying under Victor. We were 2 men who had been through a war, now finding common ground in the peace. I realized that by helping my family, I was finally healing myself. The Empire Casino was no longer a symbol of rejection. It was a symbol of redemption. I was the master of my own fate, and I had brought my family along for the journey. But the reconciliation wasn't without its challenges. Some of the old partners Arthur had dealt with were not happy about my arrival. They had been profiting from the casino's decline and didn't want to lose their grip. One night, a man named Barrett, a ruthless investor, confronted me in the lobby. "You think you can just walk in and change the rules?" He sneered. I looked at him with the calm I had perfected over the years. "The rules already changed, Barrett," I replied. "You just didn't get the memo. The Empire is no longer a playground for vultures." Barrett threatened to sue, but I had already documented every illegal deal he had made with my father. I handed him a folder of evidence. "Leave now, and I won't turn this over to the authorities," I said. He blanched, realizing I had outplayed him before the game even started. He left, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. I was protecting my family. No, I was the shield they never had. Arthur watched the exchange from the mezzanine. He nodded to me, a gesture of genuine respect. He was finally seeing the power of the son he had once discarded. As the casino thrived, I decided to start a foundation for displaced children in the city. I wanted to ensure that no other boy would be left on the steps of an orphanage because he didn't fit a certain mold. I used the profits from the Empire to fund education and mentorship programs. I wanted to create a legacy that was about more than just gambling. Arthur supported this completely. He even volunteered his time to speak to the kids about the mistakes he had made. It was beautiful to see him try to make amends. One afternoon, we were sitting on the balcony overlooking the casino floor. "I never thought I'd see the day when the Empire was known for something good," Arthur admitted. I looked at the crowd below, people smiling, laughing, and enjoying themselves responsibly. "Success isn't measured by the stack of chips on the table, Father," I said. "It's measured by the lives you touch." He reached over and placed his hand on mine. His hand was still shaky, but his grip was firm. "You are a better man than I ever was, Elias," he said. Those were the words I had waited 20 years to hear. The circle was finally complete. However, a new threat emerged from the shadows. A rival casino group from Macau, angry that I had snatched the Empire out from under them, decided to wage an all-out price war. They started offering impossible odds and free luxury suites to steal our customers. My team was panicking, but I remained calm. I knew this was a game of patience. I remembered Victor's advice: when your enemy overreaches, stay still. I told my staff to maintain our quality and not to get dragged into a race to the bottom. I focused on customer loyalty and personalized service. I invited the city's most influential people to a charity gala at the Empire. We showed them that we were a part of the community, not just a business. The rival group expanded too fast and soon started losing millions. They had tried to use brute force, but I used strategy. By the end of the year, they were forced to withdraw from the market. I had won without ever raising my voice. Arthur was amazed. "You just let them defeat themselves," he said. I nodded. "That is the true mark of a master." During this time, I also worked on repairing the relationship with my stepbrothers. They had always been jealous of the attention Arthur gave to the business, and they had grown bitter. I sat them down and explained that I didn't want their inheritance. "I have my own empire," I told them. "I only want the Empire Casino to be a family business again." I gave them real responsibilities and held them accountable. At first, they resisted, but once they saw the success we were having, they started to take pride in their work. We began to operate as a team. The family dinners, which had once been full of tension and arguments, became warm and full of laughter. I realized that the rejection I had faced had actually given me the tools to bring everyone together. If I had grown up in luxury, I might have been just as entitled as they were. My struggle had produced strength, and my strength was now supporting the whole family. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey I had taken, even the painful parts. Every step had led me to this moment of unity. One evening, I found Arthur in the old records room, looking at a photo of me as a toddler. He looked so sad. "I wondered what kind of man you would become," he whispered. I used to dream that you would come back and forgive me, but I never believed it would actually happen. I took the photo from him. I looked at the small boy with the bright eyes. Forgiveness isn't a gift for you, Father, I said. It's a gift for me. Holding on to hate is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. He nodded, understanding. We sat in silence for a while, the noise of the casino floor distant and muffled. I realized that the empire was finally in good hands. The past was no longer a burden. It was a foundation. I had proved to myself and the world that a rejected child could become the master. But more importantly, I had proved that love and redemption were always possible, no matter how deep the wounds. I felt a sense of completion. The story of the abandoned boy was over. The story of the prodigal master was just beginning. The grand reopening of the empire was the event of the season. Everyone who was anyone in the city attended. I stood on the stage with Arthur and my stepbrothers. We cut the ribbon together, symbolizing a new era. I gave a speech about the importance of resilience and the power of second chances. As I spoke, I saw the pride in Arthur's eyes. He wasn't looking at a business partner, he was looking at his son. The crowd cheered, and the casino came to life with music and light. It was the happiest night of my life. I felt like I had finally reclaimed the home that was taken from me. But as the night wore on, I realized that my work wasn't done. I wanted to expand our mission, to help other families who were struggling with the same issues we had faced. I knew I had the resources and the influence to make a real difference. I was no longer just a casino owner, I was a leader in the community. I was ready for the challenge. The prodigal master had returned, and he was here to stay. Weeks later, Victor Vane called me. He had heard about the success of the empire. I knew you could do it, Elias, he said, his voice full of warmth. You have turned a place of sorrow into a place of hope. I thanked him for everything he had done for me. Without his guidance, I would have been lost. You were the father I needed when my own father couldn't be there, I told him. He paused, clearly moved. You were the son I never had, Elias. Remember that true mastery isn't about controlling others, it's about controlling yourself. I promised to keep his lessons close to my heart. I realized that I had two fathers now, one who had taught me how to survive, and one who had taught me how to live. I felt incredibly lucky. I had taken the worst experience of my life and turned it into a beautiful future. I was surrounded by people who loved and respected me. I had an empire, a family, and a purpose. Life was good. I looked out at the city lights, feeling a sense of peace that I had never known before. I was finally home. But life always has a way of testing you one more time. Arthur's health began to decline rapidly. The years of stress and poor choices had taken their toll. I spent as much time as I could by his bedside. We talked about everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. He told me stories about his own father, who had been even tougher on him. I realized that Arthur was a product of his upbringing, just as I was. He had passed on the only thing he knew. I forgave him completely. One night, he grabbed my hand and whispered, "Promise me you will never let the empire fall again." I looked into his tired eyes and promised, "I will protect it with everything I have, Father." He smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile, and closed his eyes. He passed away peacefully, knowing that his legacy was in good hands. The funeral was attended by hundreds. People spoke about his redemption and the way he had changed in his final years. I felt a deep sense of loss, but also a deep sense of gratitude. I had had the chance to say goodbye and to fix what was broken. After the funeral, I took a few days off to clear my head. I walked along the beach, thinking about the journey I had taken. I realized that the Empire Casino was more than just a building. It was a testament to the human spirit. It showed that we can overcome anything if we have the will to succeed and the heart to forgive. I returned to work with a renewed sense of purpose. I continued to expand our foundation and our business. I built new casinos that were focused on sustainability and community impact. I became a role model for young entrepreneurs, showing them that you can be successful without being cruel. I was often asked about my secret to success. I would always pull out the old plastic poker chip and say, "Never forget where you came from, and never let anyone else define your worth." I was Elias, the Prodigal Master, and I had turned a rejection into a revolution. I was finally at peace with my past. I was looking forward to the future with excitement and hope. The years passed, and the empire flourished under my leadership. My stepbrothers grew into capable leaders themselves, and we worked together harmoniously. The foundation became one of the most successful in the country, helping thousands of children every year. I often visited the orphanage where I had once lived, seeing the bright futures of the kids there. I felt a sense of accomplishment that no amount of money could ever buy. I had created a life that was truly worth living. I had reclaimed my birthright and turned it into something greater. I had saved my family and myself. I was no longer the abandoned boy at the edge of the property. I was the master of the empire, a leader in the industry, and a beloved member of my community. I had proved that even the deepest wounds can heal if you have the courage to face them. I was happy. I was at peace. I was home. The story of the Prodigal Master was one of redemption, and it was a story that would be told for generations to come. One day, I received a letter from a young boy who had been helped by our foundation. He wrote about how he had felt alone and afraid until he heard my story. He said that I had given him the strength to keep going. I read the letter with tears in my eyes. I realized that my struggle had had a purpose far beyond my own success. By sharing my journey, I was helping others find their own path to redemption. I decided to write a book about my life, telling the whole truth about the abandonment, the struggle, and the ultimate triumph. I wanted to show the world that no one is ever truly lost. The book became a bestseller, and I traveled the world speaking to audiences about the power of forgiveness and the importance of self-worth. I was able to reach so many more people than I ever could through the casino business alone. I felt like I was finally fulfilling my true calling. I was a storyteller, a leader, and a master of my own destiny. I was Elias, and my story was just beginning. I am sitting in my office now, looking out at the neon lights of the empire. The casino is as vibrant and successful as ever. But the true success is the sense of unity and purpose that pervades the entire organization. We are a family, in every sense of the word. I look at the photo of Arthur on my desk and smile. I know he would be proud of what we have achieved. I think about Victor Vane and the lessons he taught me. I am grateful for every person who has played a part in my journey. I realize that life is a game of chance, but it's also a game of strategy and heart. You can't always control the cards you are dealt, but you can always control how you play them. I have played my hand the best I could, and I have won the ultimate prize, a life of meaning and love. I am at peace with the world. I am ready for whatever comes next. I am the Prodigal Master, and my legacy is one of hope and redemption. The lights of the empire will always shine bright, a beacon for all who have ever felt rejected. As the sun rises over the city, I take one last look at the old plastic poker chip before placing it in a glass case on my desk. It is no longer a symbol of pain, but a trophy of my triumph. I walk out of my office and down to the casino floor. The staff greet me with warm smiles, and I feel the energy of the room. It's a new day, and there are new opportunities to make a difference. I see a young boy standing near the entrance, looking a bit overwhelmed. I walk over to him and kneel down. "Don't be afraid," I say softly. "You are in the right place. Here, everyone has a chance to be a master." He smiles, and I see the same bright eyes I once had. I know that he will be okay. The cycle of rejection is broken. The empire is a place of possibilities now. I stand up and walk into the crowd, ready to lead my family and my business into the future. I am Elias, the Prodigal Master, and my journey is complete. I have turned the losing hand into a winning streak that will never end. I am finally enough.